Hello and welcome to the Fit to Transform podcast, where you learn how to train and diet effectively and, most importantly, how to maintain those results for life, once and for all. I'm Nikias Tomasiello, a transgender training and nutrition coach working online with anyone who's ready for a true lifestyle transformation, anywhere they may be in the world. As a friendly reminder, any and all information provided is for educational purposes only. You should consult with your doctor before implementing any changes to your diet and exercise program. With that disclaimer out of the way, thank you for being here. Now grab yourself a cup of tea or pre-workouts and enjoy. Yo, hello and welcome back to the podcast. Thank you for tuning in to this solo episode, which is the first in a brand new series that I have planned called the Muscle Masterclass Series. The purpose of it is going to be to help you learn how to design your very own resistance training program. What I am going to attempt to share with you is principles, the scientific principles of training program design. Of course, this is not the same as hiring a coach who can design that program for you. I spent hundreds of hours and continue to spend my time fine-tuning my understanding of this science. However, by the end of this mini series, you will certainly have a better understanding of the basics, and you will be able to create a program that, in my view, is likely going to be much better than most of the free cookie cutter programs that are out there right now. With the exception, of course, of my own free training program titled A Taste of Gains that you can find in the first email that I send to all new newsletter subscribers. So if you're not already subscribed to the newsletter, this is your chance to do so right now because there is a link in the show notes. And as a thank you for that, you will receive a taste of gains right away. Anyway, in this first episode, I am going to lay the foundations for the rest. I'm going to talk about why evidence-based effective program design is based on principles instead of rules. Then I'll cover the basic differences between the fitness adaptations that a typical resistance training program can accomplish. And finally, I'm going to discuss the top priority in a muscle growth oriented program. And without further ado, let us begin. I am going to share with you principles instead of rules, and the difference is important. There are no rules when it comes to training program design because rules imply that we are all the same and that therefore what is appropriate for one person is going to be appropriate for everyone else, when this is not the case. While there are similarities among human beings, which is why in a research setting we can draw averages, there are also a lot of variables that affect our response to resistance training: biological age, training age, hormonal milieu, health conditions, lifestyle factors, and so on. In other words, context matters. So there isn't one right way to design a training program. That's why it's important to understand the principles underlying training program design instead of thinking that there must be rules, because the principles can be adapted to your context, whereas rules, by definition, would always stay the same. In addition to that, rules are not science-based, whereas principles are. That's because science cannot tell you the single one best way to write a training program. The purpose of science is to ask questions and to attempt to answer them by collecting data on that question and analyzing the data. Science doesn't provide a single answer either. We don't just run a single experiment and then move on once we have the answer. We keep repeating the same experiment over and over again in order to refine the answer. So, if you're using the scientific method, you can't give rules because rules imply that you found your one answer and you are going to stop questioning, collecting data, analyzing it, and refining the answer. That's why, in my view, rules go against the scientific method. These are the two main differentiating factors between rules and principles. And training program design is based on principles which are also backed by evidence as well as practice. And speaking of evidence, speaking of the scientific methods, it is by using the scientific method that you develop your training program over time. No good program stays the same forever. You're going to start by applying the principles to the best of your ability, and then as you continue performing these sessions involved in the program every week, you're going to collect data on yourself and your performance. You're going to analyze these data and you're going to make adjustments accordingly. So, my goal with this series is to help you understand the basic principles underlying training program design and also help you understand how to analyze your own data once you have the initial program in place so that you can start to understand how to make tweaks over time. So, where do we start with training program design? The purpose of any training program is to achieve a specific goal called a fitness adaptation. And each adaptation requires the application of different scientific principles. To clarify what I mean by adaptation, I'm going to list a few of the most common ones: endurance, strength, and muscle growth. My personal specialty is muscle growth and lifestyle or functional strength. So, the training program that I am going to help you learn how to design will aim to achieve these two goals. Now, each fitness adaptation requires a specific type of program. For example, the type of training program that is going to best help you develop muscle growth and or lifestyle slash functional strength is a resistance training program. But resistance training can be applied to achieve other fitness adaptations as well. So I'm going to cover in brief the differences between muscle growth, absolute strength, and lifestyle or functional strength so that we are on the same page about the basic differences between them. I'll start with muscle growth, which you have also heard me refer to in the past as hypertrophy or hypertrophy. Hypertrophy and muscle growth are not exactly interchangeable terms because, in theory, we can achieve muscle growth not only through hypertrophy but also through hyperplasia. However, it seems like in humans, the main mechanism by which we can accomplish muscle growth is hypertrophy. And for this reason, if you read any scientific paper on the matter of muscle growth, you will find it referred to as hypertrophy. So, for these reasons, I may use the two terms interchangeably, but it is important to me to clarify that they're not exactly the same. They are in the context of the human body as far as we know right now, and as far as training program design is concerned. Muscle growth seems to have a dose response relationship with volume and intensity of effort. And I am going to cover this dose response relationship in more detail in future episodes of this mini series. Absolute strength is what I would define as the maximum weight that you can lift for a specific number of reps. For example, the maximum weight that you can lift for 5 repetitions. This adaptation seems to have a relationship with the load that you lift. and it seems to be very specific to the exercise that you perform and to the number of reps that you do. For instance, if you are a power lifter, one of the three lifts that a power lifter performs is the squat. And each lift is performed for just one repetition. So, in order to develop the specific skill of absolute strength in the squat, a power lifter will spend a large part of their training performing single repetitions of the squat specifically. There is more to powerlifting programming than this, but this is a basic overview of it, just to give you an initial understanding. Whereas if we're looking at muscle growth, we don't care so much about what specific exercise we're doing or how many reps we're doing. We're much more interested in the total volume and the intensity of effort or proximity to failure. And in general, in order to achieve muscle growth, you're going to find that a training program geared towards this goal typically has a greater volume and also a greater intensity of effort than a strength oriented training program, and it has more flexibility around exercise selection. Finally, lifestyle or functional strength is actually a concept that I came up with to define the type of strength that you need to go about your daily life independently. For example, the strength that enables you to open jars without help, or carry heavy boxes and bags, participate in sports, go hiking, and feel strong and fit while doing so. This adaptation isn't necessarily scientific. As I said, it's more my own definition than a scientific adaptation. And therefore, it doesn't need specific programming like absolute strength would. And my muscle growth oriented programs are going to help you develop this lifestyle or functional strength. For this reason, you might have heard the idea that bodybuilding style training, which is muscle growth oriented training, isn't functional in quotation marks. But to me, the idea is incorrect. For one, there is no scientific definition of the term functional. But let's say that by functional, we mean that we are fit and able to go about life independently. Now, muscle growth oriented training may not be functional in the sense that the exercises that you do don't matter very much because you can grow your quads with both leg extensions and squats. But having bigger muscles means having stronger muscles. And stronger muscles are most definitely going to help you be more fit and prepared to live life independently than smaller muscles. So, if your goals are either muscle growth and or lifestyle strength, this is the mini series for you. However, from here on out, when discussing the main goal of the training programs that I will help you learn to design, I will refer to muscle growth only, because this is the science-based adaptation, whereas lifestyle or functional strength is my own concept. The last topic I want to cover in this episode is the most important, and it's the top priority in a muscle growth oriented program. That priority is consistency. If consistency isn't there, you are not going to see the best results that you have the potential to get. So, before we talk about the perfect amount of volume to make gains or the perfect intensity of effort, we need to make sure that the training program you're going to design is going to keep you as consistent as possible. And the first and foremost way to accomplish this is to choose the maximum number of days that you can realistically commit to for your program. Importantly, I am not suggesting that you have to pick one number now and stick with it forever. You can also have what I call seasons of training. For instance, sometimes, let's say in the summer, you work fewer hours. So realistically, you could go to the gym 5 days per week. Whereas over the winter, you pick up more hours, so you can only train 4 times per week. I wouldn't pick 4 times and stick with that throughout the summer. I would create a training program that includes 4 sessions over the winter and then switch to a training program that includes 5 sessions over the summer. Once you've nailed down how many days you can realistically train for, this is going to provide the context into which to program all of the other variables that are necessary to generate muscle growth. Now, this isn't a rule, but in my experience as a coach, my clients build significant muscle when they train at least 3 times per week. And 4 times per week is the number of sessions with which I have seen clients build the most amount of muscle. And you could train more than 4 days per week. However, most of my clients don't have that time availability. They are not athletes who get paid to do this. They have jobs, they have families, they have other commitments, and fitness isn't always their number one priority. So, in my experience coaching clients since 2019, 4 times per week seems to be the sweet spot between doing enough to make significant gains and not so much that you can't keep up with the rest of your life and you start feeling like fitness is taking over. Having said that, 2 times per week could be appropriate to grow, but only for 2 types of people. Stark beginners who are only just starting to train for the first time, or people who haven't trained in months. The longer you are consistent with training for, the slower the gains that you're going to be able to see by training 2 times per week. And in fact, at a certain point, you're only just going to be maintaining on 2 times per week, or you're going to be making such slow gains that you're going to think you're only maintaining because it takes too long for our human eye to detect that kind of slow progress. Personally, fitness is a really big priority for me. It is one of my 3 top priorities in life at the moment. So I do make the time to train 5 days per week. I tried some stints in the past of training 6 days, but at that point, I did feel like it was taking over my schedule because having only one rest day wasn't enough for me to be able to honor not only this priority, but also my other priorities in life, which are my job as a coach and my personal creative writing. So that's a wrap for today's podcast. In episode number 2, we're going to cover the macro level variables that matter the most for muscle growth. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss out on the notifications about the next one. And if you're interested in getting personalized one-on-one coaching with moi, you can use the link in the show notes to read more about the details of the service, pricing structure, and also to fill out your application form, and I will respond to you within 72 hours max. I look forward to hearing from you and to talking to you in the next episode. Lastly, if you want to support the podcast and help me reach more people, please leave a 5-star rating or review on any podcast platform that you're using. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.